Whether you're building furniture for yourself or for a client, the difference between it being good and great, it all comes down to the details. On today's episode, I'm going to share a tip with you on how to make it great. Now, before we get started, I would like to thank the folks over there at Woodcraft for sponsoring today's episode. At Woodcraft, they have the right people with the right tools to help you get the job done right. Woodcraft, helping you make wood work. Okay, we can probably all agree that a well-designed piece of furniture serves form and function as well as beauty. Now, part of that beauty is the wood that we choose. And this is where I want to tell you where the wood grain, direction, and pattern really matters. So let me explain. Many times our project probably requires a large board in it somewhere, and if a large board isn't available, well, a common practice is to take another board and join and glue it together. And now, although this probably meets the measurement requirements for the project, something that we're missing is the wood grain pattern and direction, and this could potentially make this an eyesore. So today I'm going to give you a couple of examples on how to deal with this problem. So the first example that I want to show you, it's going to be a poor one. Now you're going to see this on many factory-made cabinet doors. If you'll notice on this example here, the first thing that sticks out to you is the tone of the wood isn't right. And this could be a couple of reasons. One, even though it's oak, it could be cut from different parts of the oak tree, meaning the heartwood, which is closer to the center, versus the sapwood, which is closer to the outside of the tree. Another thing could be too is it could be two totally different oak trees. Now, besides the tone not being right, if you look close, they didn't even try to get the wood grain pattern to match. This really sticks out, and so instead of it being a pleasant looking cabinet door, it is really an eyesore now. So some things to keep in mind when you're selecting your wood, besides looking for it to be straight and not twisted or bowed, make sure you pay attention to the color tone and also the grain pattern on each board you select. So the second example I want to share with you is from a recent table that I made, a rustic table out of walnut. Now I wasn't able to get the walnut in one large slab, so I had to glue up several boards together. And this actually posed a big time consumer for me, was trying to get the boards to line up. So let me show you an excerpt from that video where I specifically talk about matching up the grain. So recap, here's where I'm at. The customer wants this rustic table, but I'm dealing with two problems. One, I couldn't get a solid slab that was this width and this length. The other problem is, even if I could get a slab of this size, I'm not sure it would fit into the customer's budget. So what I'm trying to do is give them a rustic look, but I'm going to have to join and glue boards together. Now, I was able to go over to KenCraft and get these pieces, and the first thing that I wanted to do to try and make this look kind of consistent was making sure that the color tone was fairly even on them. Now, you'll notice that this piece here has some of the sapwood on it, and clearly I wouldn't want that as one of the middle boards. The second problem I'm having is trying to somehow match the grain. Because these pieces are rustic, I have a lot of different grain direction going on it, and I took hours and hours trying to flip these around, lay them out to get something that kind of works. And I could only do it in certain areas. You can see on these two boards here, this section, the grain I think will look nice when it's joined together. Likewise, over on this piece, you can see this grain is fairly similar. I think those will look nice. But other than that, I'm going to have some noticeable seams where these are put together. The next thing too was the noticeable distinguishing features on it. So because they love that rustic look, they want some of these different knots and features to it. But I didn't want them too close together. For example, I really love the look of this knot, and I thought this had a nice feature on it too. So I wanted to make sure that they weren't right next to each other. I also spaced it over one board and tried to put them left to right to each other to give the table overall some continuity and also visually to make sure that your eyes kind of flowed around and looked at the whole top. I didn't have all the features just in one area. All right, so from there I'm going to now try and cut these and join these boards together. Now, if you would like to see the whole video of the build of that rustic table, well, I'll have a link in the description below for you. But for now, let's move on to another example. Now, the next example I want to show you is a table that I built for a Woodcraft video series last year. And I really love the design and look of this table that I made. Now, take a look at the front. What do you notice? Well, probably the lights. That's what everyone notices. But look closer. Look how the drawer front and the rest of the front of the table, it all lines up. That's because I cut that out of one board. It's a small detail, but you can see how the grain on the rails matches the drawer front. If I did it out of a separate piece of wood, it would really stand out and take away from the overall flow of it. Now, let's move to the top of the table. I found a couple of boards that I thought just looked amazing together, and when I joined them, you could hardly tell the seam was there. However, the overall width of the table came up a few inches short. And so I looked through my material I had. I even went back to KenCraft where I bought the wood, and unfortunately, I couldn't find an exact match of that wood grain. So I'm left with a dilemma. Do I use the majority of this wood that I love for something else, or do I somehow try to make it work? So what I did was I decided that when the table was going to be done, stuff was probably going to be placed on top of the table. And the stuff is probably going to sit more towards the back, like a clock, a lamp, a vase. So I decided, even though I couldn't get a perfectly matched grain pattern, that extra piece that I added on, I moved it to the back, so hopefully it would get covered up and not noticed. So there you are, that's one simple tip on paying attention to the wood grain, pattern, and direction to really help you elevate your woodworking and turn it into a masterpiece. Now, if you're interested on the subject of furniture design, I wrote an easy-to-read 15-page ebook called The 6 Rules to Better Furniture Design. In this book, I explain to you the rules, the methods, and the strategies to help you train your eye and your skills to become a better woodworker. Now, some further books on that subject, if you would like to add to your library, I would recommend the Practical Design Solutions and Strategies from the editors of Fine Woodworking. Another book still on the same topic of design is Design Your Own Furniture by Jim Stack. Both of these books have some really good tips and points in them, and you can never go wrong by building your library collection. Now, recently, a video I did, I received a CNC machine, and you watched me unbox it. I'm going to be going over some projects in it, and more importantly, common mistakes that are made using the CNC that's not only frustrating to you as the user, but can also potentially waste good material. I'm going to cover that with you so you don't have those same problems. But a book that I recently got that I am very much enjoying the reading is the CNC Router Essentials by Randy Johnson. And this really helps you walk through and understand your CNC machine and programming it for all the different capabilities that it can do. So stay tuned for that, and any of these books that if you have an interest in, I'll have a link in the description below. Of course, as always, if you have a question or a situation that you're working on in your shop and need some help, feel free to write me at woodchoppingtime@gmail.com, because after all, my whole goal is to make you a better woodworker. Thanks so much for watching, and until next time, keep on dancing.